Welcome to Inside the Skev, and I'm your host, Aaron Masliansky. Today, I am delighted to be joined by Congresswoman Jan Schakowsky, who represents the 9th District of Illinois, which includes the Skev, Skokie, and Evanston, and many more areas throughout town. And just want to say thank you for being here.
Oh, it's really my pleasure. Thank you for inviting me.
Well, it's really amazing, actually. I'm kind of pinching myself that I have the opportunity to speak with you, especially during these times, because I could talk with you for hours about a lot of different questions about what's been going on. But this has been an interesting year. And, right now we're going through COVID, but at the beginning of the year, we had an impeachment trial that was going on with the president. Then we almost went to war in the Middle East with Iran. And then we have a pandemic to deal with. How do you prepare as a government for all of these types of things that can come up?
Well, we certainly were unprepared for the COVID-19 epidemic. There's no question about it, and we shouldn't have been. We saw during the earlier years of the Trump administration a number of diminutions of our preparation that have left us more exposed. I think about the freshman members. I'm in my 11th term, but the freshman members began their service in a government shutdown. So the government was not functioning. Then they had an impeachment. And now they have this. All three are things that I've never seen before either. In terms of a potential war, of course, I was very much in favor of the Iran agreement that prevented them from getting nuclear weapons, and was very disturbed when that was undone. So, worldwide, we're seeing kind of a change in democracies around the world that are becoming less so. And I think even here in the United States, we're in somewhat of a battle to save our democracy. So there's a lot of things that we have to deal with. Although we're preoccupied for good reason with the COVID epidemic and pandemic right now.
Right.
And of course, it has changed really the life of every single American right now.
Oh, it's changed the life of everyone throughout the world. And,
all over the world, yes.
What do we do, though? Because I think, certain people, what we're dealing with right now, and I want to get into some of the questions about what's going on, the government response and what you're doing. But, one of the things is that right now people are hurting, whether they're hurting financially, whether they're hurting physically, isolating, their mental health, whatever it may be. And you have a lot of people who think that the government has overblown it and it's a farce, and a lot of people who are taking it incredibly seriously. There's two different sets of realities. And you have this with a lot of what's been going on. And, normally throughout the history of this country, we've had arguments. We've obviously had a civil war, disagreement about, fundamental aspects of this country. But right now we have fundamental questions about what reality is and whose reality is correct. How do you function in that type of environment?
Well, it's really difficult, though. I want to say, Aaron, that most Americans think that we need to go slowly in terms of opening up the economy and people going back to work and businesses functioning. And so I think it's not like 50-50 disagreement in this country. We know that there are people who think that this still remains a hoax, and we get very, I think, unhelpful signals from the President of the United States, who goes to a factory that makes masks and won't wear a mask. Science is what I think needs to guide us. That there really are facts in this world. There is truth. Some things are and some things aren't. And sometimes there are gray areas, even when it comes to science. What is the best way that we should proceed? But, we are seeing a president, I think, who on just about every score has mismanaged this crisis, that most other countries have done a better job. When you look now at both China, which he demonizes now as the mastermind behind this pandemic, certainly started there, there's no question. But and you look at South Korea, where they have pretty much eliminated the pandemic there, and are able to go back more to normal. We see a tragic mishandling and a continuous mishandling of the situation because of a failure that science matters, that facts matter, that it's not just messaging, it's not just painting a compelling picture, which the president is very good at doing.
Yeah.
It's what is really happening. And it is very disturbing when this becomes now a partisan kind of issue. There's no room at all for partisanship right now.
This is life and death.
Exactly. We see scientists like Tony Fauci who are not being allowed to testify.
Yeah, why isn't he being allowed to testify to Congress? Isn't that the responsibility that we as the American people need to be able to hear from the experts? And the House of Representatives is that forum.
Yes, we're about to hear from a whistleblower who is concerned that he was essentially demoted, fired, forced to leave because he couldn't criticize the president of the United States and disagree, not even criticize, just disagree with the president. Tony Fauci has done that. Even right in front of the president, when the president says, this is going to, early on when he said, we're going to get down to zero, we're going to have a vaccine soon, Dr. Fauci would go to the microphone and say, no, I'm sorry, it's still likely to be a year, maybe even longer before we have a vaccine. Or when the president says, we had to really look at this issue of, ingesting bleach and, where the experts, the people who really know, including the Lysol company,
right? They have to put something out.
Do not in any way ingest, drink Lysol. This is, a poison. Most of us learned that as children.
Right. It's a fundamental thing. But What are you doing right now? What is the current update of what the government is doing right now to respond? I know you're working on some very critical things for the senior community, right?
I've been working on and focusing a lot on nursing homes where a disproportionate number of deaths in this country can be attributed to nursing homes, both the residents and the workers. By the way, I'm happy to say that the workers in the state of Illinois have achieved there's not going to be a strike. They got the important things that they wanted. It wasn't mostly about wages. It was about sick leave. It was about having enough protective gear in the homes. It was really much more about the quality of care, which for the workers, which influences the quality of care for patients as well. So that's very good news. But we're going to have a comprehensive bill, and I think for our communities, for Evanston and Skokie, one of the concerns has been not only the money that has to be being spent on the pandemic itself. We are among the few municipalities that actually have our own health departments, both Skokie and Evanston. And so there's been a good deal of money that has been spent in that regard, but it's also just the enormous loss of revenue, of sales taxes, of business taxes. People aren't going out into the community and spending. And so the demand across the country from municipalities has been, we need direct help, not just going through the state. And so we're going to pass a bill that's going to have, I don't know, I think probably at least $1 trillion that will be for state, county, and local governments, individually distributed. So we don't have to rely on the state. And I think that the Governor Pritzker, has been doing a great job, but we don't have to rely on trickle down to municipalities. So it'll come directly to municipalities, because the threshold before was if you were a municipality over 500,000 people. Well, none of our northern suburbs, certainly not Evanston and Skokie, or any of them.
Consolidate. We'll be the Skev.
Yeah. So we're going to see some relief, and that means that we'll be able to put money into CDBG, that is the local funds that go to the safety net that we need in our communities. There are, for our first responders, we want to make sure that they have all the equipment that they need, that they're able to take off the time and quarantine if they actually do have the virus and still get their paychecks. So there's been a lot of demands on just ordinary things in government, fixing roads and taking care of the ongoing needs of cities. And so I very much look forward to that. In addition, I mentioned what the way that the Speaker of the House, Nancy Pelosi, describes the next bill. It's about saving lives, saving livelihoods, and saving our democracy. Yeah. And so on the last thing, what we want is something Illinois already has, and that is vote by mail as an option, that everybody will have the opportunity to cast their ballot. If there are still people worried when comes election time, and of course there's still primary elections around the country, that there will be the option to vote by mail, and certainly by November 3rd, so that everybody will have that opportunity to vote any which way they want to. If it's important for people to go on election day, then the states will be permitted to do that, of course, as well. So, we don't want to see voter suppression anywhere. And we've seen it in our neighboring states, in both Wisconsin and in Michigan, in the 2016 election. So we want to make sure, and even recently in Wisconsin, when voters...
There were huge lines.
Yeah, there were huge lines. They were close to each other. There have certainly been people since then that have gotten the disease. I don't know that it can be directly attributed. But, every time you go out, if you're not wearing a mask and you're not doing distancing, then you could be in danger.
I have a few questions about what you just said. One is in terms of voting. Why can't we go through a system of online voting where there can be high security? I mean, things can happen with mail. Things can happen in person, too, in terms of security and making sure that the votes are correct. But why can't we go to figure out a system where it's digital, where we could increase significantly the amount of votes that people are able to, that everybody could be able to vote?
Aaron, are there any states doing digital online voting?
No, not that I'm aware of.
Yeah, not that I'm aware of either. I think that ultimately, and I think that process will be moved along by I've heard 30%, sometimes even higher increase in digital communications. But of course, the issue of security has been a huge one. We're struggling with that issue right now as members of Congress. Can we vote remotely?
Right. How do you even conduct Congress right now with everyone being fearful of getting sick?
We amazingly, we're later today, every Monday and Thursday. For a while, it was almost every day. We have caucus conference calls, 180 people. We're on the last one on Monday out of 230, I think. So not everybody participated, but a good number. The But it's difficult. I agree with you, because when we're not there, if we have a Q&A period, which we always do, you're not going to get 180 people who may have an opinion that they want to weigh in on. So what I believe that we're going to do, and I think we're probably going to go back next week, because there will be a vote on the next bill that'll have a lot of relief. So, if our government officials in our towns are listening, we should come up with that help for local government. There will be a vote on, I believe that it'll come down to proxy voting, that members will be able to designate a person and the exact vote. It's not as if some member is going to give me the right to vote for them how I feel. Yeah. It'll be on the exact vote. And then anyone and there are people who are compromised, who have relatives that they're staying with that need help. There's a lot of reasons that people will not be able to vote or expose themselves to the virus. And so I think a number of people will vote, give a proxy vote. There's still some concern about the security of online voting, remote voting in Congress. And so until those are really cleared up, we're on Zoom right now. It's been really recommended that when we have things that are, I wouldn't say classified, but if things that you don't want to know, that Zoom isn't the best way to go. And, hackers have sometimes been ahead of our ability to control them. And so I think it's understandable. But I have to tell you something else, Aaron, in terms of members of Congress. We've identified, or the government has identified, who's an essential worker. And we include people at the grocery store, in warehouses, who, by the way, are often mailing things out to us that aren't essential, but they have to box them up and get them to us. Everyone, even though the Postal Service is under really illegitimate attack, but they're delivering 6 days a week, very necessary things, often prescription drugs, checks, etc. And so I just think that to show visibly that your government is working, I think we need to go to Washington and cast those votes. As many of us as really can, I think, should be there. It's fine for us to ask these other people to go to work, right. But I think we're essential workers, and I think we should be there.
You're absolutely essential workers. I mean, it's the functioning of our democracy, like you're saying, which is critical. One thing that I think about when you're talking about all these basically stimulus packages to be able to help local governments, individual people, the PPP has been a huge thing. And it's been helpful for my business and so many others. And thankful that it got passed. Did you get through, Aaron, in the first round? No, in the second round. I did, and my wife has a business too, and we both were able to get it. Good. We were with Chase, so it's a large bank, so it took maybe a little bit longer. I know other people have been able to, they work with a smaller banker, and that might be something we consider.
Tell you, and I'm not going to point fingers on any one bank, but in the terms of some of the big banks, we were told first come, first serve. That just simply was not true.
No.
They worked. In fact, there were concierge services for some of the big clients of big banks. And I kind of get they probably wanted to protect their biggest loans. But I'm sorry. There were, I think, on the first round, there was only a small percentage, 14% comes to mind, maybe I'm wrong, of just, mom and pop, Main Street businesses that actually got through. And in the second round, we said it had to, I know that my bank, it's in Rogers Park, the Devon Bank, never itself as a bank made it with all of the people who applied to them at all. So now smaller banks are in line, and minority-owned banks, et cetera, in the second round. But, still there's people we're hearing from that have not gotten help. And this may be interesting. I believe that we will show that not-for-profits that are larger than 500 are going to be able to apply for that loan now, because I've been hearing from organizations that deal with people with mental illness and substance abuse and persons with disabilities that, because they're pretty big organizations, have been cut out of everything, really.
Yeah.
And I think they'll be included in the next round.
I hope so. They do critical work for people and who need the help desperately.
It was an oversight, I think. They didn't fit into any category.
Yeah, no, I'm glad that they'll be able to be included, I hope. And it's, just these small businesses. Like I had Nina Barrett from Bookends and Beginnings on my show, and we were talking a lot about, everything. This is a few weeks ago. And, she's in a small business and a bookstore in downtown Evanston. And, these types of things are the fabric of the communities. You read, Jane Jacobs, and what she would always talk about, how cities are, how they live. And we need these small businesses. So, it's a lot of money.
Let me just reply to that, because, I think one of the things I've heard predicted is that we're going to see more mergers and acquisitions, that it will be an opportunity for big companies to eat up some of the smaller companies. That's a real problem right now. There is legislation I am supporting that would prohibit those mergers and acquisitions until the end of the COVID crisis, to make sure that this isn't a time for the sharks to come out and eat the little fish who are really struggling to get the help.
That could happen quite a bit. Well, it would be interesting if that were to pass. But, with all the funds, though, are you worried that we're going to run out of money, or that U.S. currency will become devalued with all the stimulus? Because this will probably need to go on for a couple of years, realistically, until business can recover.
Well, in some ways, I think that what is essential to really open up is confidence that consumers have that they will be safe. So, the president can say everything is open right now, and I assure you that people are not going to go out. I have a birthday this month. Normally we might go to a nice restaurant and celebrate, and then maybe do a show or a movie or something. None of that is going to happen. And it wouldn't happen no matter what any elected official or bureaucrat said. Fine, go out. And so you can't separate the virus from the economy. And we're going to have to spend whatever we need to, and then gradually begin to open up. And gradually we will begin to see that kind of revenue return and investments being made. Now, you notice the stock market, while it took some deep, deep plunges, really has been pretty steady for a while, unless I'm wrong.
Get changed on a dime.
But so I think we're seeing in the investment community some confidence that we are going to come back. But unless ordinary people feel a confidence, it's really not going to happen. And that confidence is based on, am I going to get sick and die? Am I going to, make my family, come home then from somewhere and give it to them? Which, by the way, is something that frontline workers are really worrying about. That, if they don't have, and they still, in some places, don't have the protective gear they need, which is unforgivable.
Completely.
Yeah. And that's something that best would be coordinated at the federal level, but it's not. So it's being left to the states and to individual nursing homes. It's just unbelievable how set loose these frontline workers have been. But anyway, so we're going to have to spend what it takes. And that's going to take oversight too, because we did see in that first round that some businesses that shouldn't have gotten the money did get the money.
Yeah.
And we saw tucked into that first CARES bill about $131 billion in tax relief for the richest people. Come on. And so that's why we have oversight mechanisms in place now, so that we can look out for that kind of exploitation. That, you know, there's people who look at this as an opportunity to price gouge, to do things that are going to help them personally.
Yeah, there's a lot of opportunity out there for people to do that, for foreign governments to take advantage of the situation, to inflame our divisiveness. It's a serious time. Do you, I want to ask you some more questions about you and your connection here to the area while we have time. But before I ask that, I went to the University of Illinois and I graduated in the early 2000s. It was after 9/11. And one of the classes that I took was on how we respond to biowarfare and chemical warfare and all these different things. And I remember them talking a lot about the possibility of an aerosol virus being spread among a country as a act of war, or it could just be an accident. So we're going through something similar to that right now. And, what are we going to do to prepare for the next time something like this happens? Are we taking lessons learned right now, like the military does, and using that to be able to prepare and prevent something like this from happening, in the future?
I think opportunities have opened up because the pandemic has opened up these kinds of failures, of disparities that have pre-existed for a long time, and now I think will be really forced to the front. Before in 2019, we saw a loosening, for example, in nursing homes of requirements for infection specialists to be present in every nursing home. Now that's no longer a strict requirement that, we are definitely needing infection specialists. And so we have an opportunity going forward to fill in so many of the gaps. Another one would be the digital divide has been exposed because distance learning has been hampered by people who don't have that opportunity. That's in rural communities and in urban areas too.
Sure.
Certainly racial disparities. When we see in the city of Chicago, over 70% of the deaths among African Americans, who make up 20-something percent of 23, 28, maybe percent of the population. And so I think we're going to have a great opportunity to make those kinds of important changes. I think the military is actually a good example. In real wartime, the government has said, you will produce these weapons of war. And we have seen a president not willing to use the Defense Production Act to make sure that we have enough masks and enough gloves for everyone in this country. So I'm actually hopeful on that front that the glaring examples of these kinds of disparities will really move the country to have a better public health system, which we desperately need. So there may be a slight silver lining to all of this, that we can do better and prevent these things the next time.
Well, I would hope that we're able to create a U.S. based system to be able to produce the masks that we need on or whatever we need to have a larger stockpile, and be able to create the testing that we need on a very quick basis, where we could just once you figure out how to test for it, turn it on, because that's what we really need. Every American citizen, American resident, whoever, needs hundreds of tests, so we could test ourselves on a regular basis and know it's safe.
We need millions, absolutely, and
millions.
Even a day have to be given, and they say they're ramping up, but Aaron, we're in May,
right?
This is May, that we're finally, it seems, maybe having that discussion at the federal level. I'm glad you changed from saying citizens to residents, because you know what, this virus does not know the difference.
Correct.
And so if we have immigrants who often are frontline workers that are getting the disease, we're all at risk. We're
right.
all in the same mold here. And so, we see this discrimination against immigrants is not helping us move forward.
It doesn't make a difference who you are, where you come from. We're all human, we've got to think about that. We got to think about that when we think about the World Health Organization. We need to coordinate. We need a coordinated global effort to really help all of us. I mean, this is the truest global challenge that we have faced since World War II.
And guess what country did not go to a worldwide gathering of countries to figure out how to work together to stem this pandemic, to end this pandemic? The United States didn't go. We were AWOL, missing in action.
It's a problem. It's frustrating. But the only way to break past that frustration in many ways is to become active and involved. Mm-hmm. And you're somebody who's been in government for a long time, and you've devoted your life to civil service. What got you interested in it? How did you become a representative?
Well, I'm gonna give the short version of my creation story, which actually, Aaron, began when I was a very young housewife living in Mount Prospect, and a group of women got together because we simply wanted to know how old our food was, because every item in the grocery store had a code and not a date. You couldn't go through the milk or the packaged goods and find out how old things were, if they were expired and really old. And so we became kind of detectives. We would go to the stock boys, push them against the shelf, say, how do you know how old the food was? And we found things that were days, weeks, months, and years beyond the date. We didn't question the dates. And infant formula and baby food were big offenders. And that was particularly disturbing to these young women that we were. We called ourselves modestly National Consumers United, because we figured everybody wanted to know how old their food was. And so we ran a real campaign. We invited the press when we would do store inspections. And finally, Jewel was the first to say, come to Jewel, we have freshness dates on our house brands. And it snowballed from there. The Oscar Mayer was one of the first of the brand name products to start putting a buy or best to serve by. And now they're pretty ubiquitous, and even internationally somewhat, finding those dates. Well, that changed me from an ordinary housewife to an ordinary housewife who could really make a difference in the world. I had stopped teaching when I had my two little kids. They were in the cart often when we were doing our inspections in the grocery store. We were threatened with arrest. We said, no, I'm sorry, the kids have to get home for a nap. We can't get arrested today. It's not going to work. Lawyers were hired by some of the companies to follow us around. Sometimes we were just shopping and they were looking over our shoulder at shopping lists. But you can imagine it was an empowering experience for a young person. And it was the bug that made me see that, an ordinary person who has no title, no credential, could actually, when getting involved, make a difference. It's not like the hugest difference in the world, but I see people checking those dates, and it's very rewarding to see that. I'm tempted to say, "Moi, I did that." No, I don't though. But so ever since then, really, I've been an activist, an organizer, and believe in grassroots. The efficacy of grassroots organizing. I'm constantly trying to get people, call your congressperson. It doesn't take more than even 10 calls on a single subject to bring it to our attention. It makes a real difference. And so, it led me to run for office. My first race I lost, perhaps the most important race I ran, because I learned to be a candidate. I learned to ask for money. Someday we'll get the money out of politics, and learn more about policy making, and then ran for the state legislature and won 8 years there, and then won that office and won, and ran against J.B. Pritzker. By the way, he was in that race. I beat him. Yeah, I tease him every now and then about that. And I still think of myself as an organizer, trying to mobilize people to be partners in this effort to make our country and, yes, our world better. And I believe we can do it. Elections really, really, really matter. I think we're living through an example of that.
Oh, absolutely we are. And, one of the things why it matters so much is because when we vote, we're voting for the people to represent our interests. Now, you represent the 9th District, which is anywhere from Arlington Heights to Evanston, Wilmette, down into Chicago and Rogers Park. How do you represent such a diverse district and, figure out what their interests are? Is it just based on people reaching out to you, or how do you know?
Well, I've been doing these remote conversations with people in our business community, primarily our small business community, with people who live throughout the district. We are taking calls. I want to tell you, Aaron, we always have gotten every now and then a call of an adult weeping. That happens.
Oh, boy.
But it is much more common now. People are feeling desperate. I'm a progressive Democrat. My interest is in everyday people. The big companies, the wealthy Americans, they have the wherewithal to lobby for themselves and to speak out for themselves, and have a disproportionate amount of power already. It's just regular people like me. I mean, that's my background. I grew up in West Rogers Park. I went to Rogers School. I graduated from Sullivan High School, that I'm very, very involved with. It was called Immigrant High in Chicago Magazine. It's a very different school demographically, but it's the regular people from that district, and so that is really my mission. Healthcare, in large part, drove me originally, that every American is deserving of healthcare as a right. We're still not there. We're seeing it really in high relief right now. And I'm fighting right now to make sure that any vaccine or effective therapy is accessible and affordable for every single person. Free would be, if you don't have insurance, it should be free to you.
It should be, because...
So those are the things that have always driven me.
Yeah, no, I was just going to say it should be free, because if we're spending so much money on things to help business and community, that is the the silver bullet, that vaccine. So if everyone can get it, and then we have complete immunity, it would be amazing.
And by the way, you and all taxpayers have also invested in those products. We put a lot of money into the CDC, into the National Institutes of Health, to do the preliminary scientific work to develop those products. And so we cannot allow companies to get exclusive patents and charging an arm and a leg for those after the major multi-billion-dollar investments in the development of those drugs and those therapies. So, it's something we're going to have to really watch carefully to make sure that happens, that people can afford it, that it's free.
It's critical. It's really critical. If somebody, though, wants to take your path and become involved in government or having a voice in the community, what do you recommend people do? How do they get involved?
This is the time. If you have a particular interest, if you are ambitious about running for office, or you want to raise your profile in an organization that is doing good work. We see leaders of the environmental movement that are deciding to run for office. And by the way, young people are running for office. I just did an endorsement video for someone who is running to be the head of the high school Democrats. Huh. And so I endorsed him and, did a video for him. I'm always trying to lift young people to choose to run for office. We see young people now on school boards, on local, they're aldermen and city council members around the district now that are young and diverse, representing different communities. And sometimes, so when you make a name for yourself as a leader of something, it can be a neighborhood organization, it can be an issue organization, gun violence, the environment, and you can get involved in elections. Elections are based on merit. I'll never forget going into an office in a city in Iowa where the woman who was running the office was all of 18 years old. Why? Because she had gotten involved in that campaign and was so incredibly productive and organized that, yes, she could boss around the senior citizens and all the other adults that were there and mobilize young people to do it. They're merit-based. Get involved in a local campaign, a national campaign, my campaign, where we're putting people all over the place. And by the way, right now, what we're doing is a Good Neighbor project. Because we want to make sure that it's through my campaign, and we're organizing all through the county, through Democratic organizations, people who want to get involved in calling people who might be vulnerable, if they need help. And about 5% of the people that we call actually need something, but we're glad to help them. They need Meals on Wheels. They need to get on the SNAP program, which is the food stamp program, or they want some groceries delivered to their house, and we make that happen. But most of them just want to talk. A lot of people who are isolated right now, this is really a breeding ground for mental illness or just anxiety. And so we're getting people just to do check-in calls and chat with people. And so if you want to get involved in the Good Neighbor program, you can contact my office and we can help do that. And there's many other things that are happening in Evanston, that food pantries and delivering of food, and, check it out.
Yeah, there's such a great amount of goodwill being done by people right now all around the area, helping the homeless, helping people who are in dire straits, the Niles Township Food Pantry.
Yep.
Yeah. It's
And
been
people have never been in line before are in line, and I heard about, I can't remember the state, might have been Pennsylvania, 2 miles of cars in line to get food. In the United States of America, the richest country in the world. Aaron, this is one of the issues that we have to grab by the horns and do something about. It's not right.
It's scary. And that's why it's so important to get involved. For me, I'm a real estate agent. I've been involved in real estate for years, and I always just had more of a passion to be involved in things around the world. And I've got myself very involved at the Chicago Council on Global Affairs. Yeah. And what's amazing to me, what I've learned, and even doing this show and having this conversation with you right now, is that if you're able to put together the effort and start to make those connections, you have the ability to have tremendous access to people. I've sat in rooms with people that I am pinching myself, that I'm being able to ask them questions about things that are going on in the world that they have a direct effect on, just like right now. And I think that could be an inspiration to people to get involved.
I absolutely agree with you. People, know your power. Know your own power and exercise it, and you will be surprised, like Aaron just said he was, about the connections that you can make to people, to authors, to all kinds of people who are ready and willing, if you'll do something and participate, to deal with you.
Yeah, absolutely. It's empowering.
It sure is.
Yes. So if people want to be able to find out what's going on with you and government, how do you suggest they go ahead and follow that?
People who, can go to my website. That's easy to find. You can call me at 773-506-7100. That's an office number. Things are busy, but we try very hard within a half an hour to get back to people. So I'm probably one of the easiest people to find online, and we do put out on our website. We have a lot of information about the programs that are available. But if you haven't gotten that check, for example, and you make less than $75,000, and you didn't get your check for $1,200 for yourself, $500 for every child. And by the way, we're pushing for not only another check to be sent out, but a lot of us are pushing for monthly checks to go out until this is over, because we hear from people, yeah, I got my check. Doesn't pay the rent.
No, it doesn't pay the rent and any help with unemployment. And there's, in my line of work as a real estate agent, a lot of us are independent contractors. So it's the first time people are trying to figure out how to file for unemployment because it's allowed. It's like a huge navigating pond should you do PPP? Should you, can you get your stimulus? So I think what you've been putting out, also your weekly emails, have been very important. And just so everyone knows, go to Schakowsky.house.gov, and that's where you can get all that information.
Right.
Yeah. Well, Congresswoman, this has been an absolute thrill. I'm going to let you go so you can take care of the business of our country, and we appreciate your service. And thank you so much for taking the time.
Let me thank you. I mean, I think you provide a service to our community as well, Aaron. Thank you very, very much. I hope maybe we can actually have a face-to-face breakfast sometime.
I would love to.
Yeah, in the district. Okay, great.
For sure. Well, thank you everybody for watching, and we'll be in touch soon.
Okay, bye.